Hello everyone. I've gotten many subscriber submissions, and I have a few stories I've also asked to narrate on Nosleep that are quite short. So after speaking with the Dark Somnium about how I should go about narrating them, he suggested that I put a lot of the shorter stories into a video together. That way, I can appease the people that want longer stories by having more things in one video for them to listen to, and also showcase all of my very talented subscribers that have been kind enough to send me submissions. And then throw in a few stories from Nosleep that are really short, but I still wanted to narrate anyway. Let me know what you think of this style of video. I really want to be able to showcase every story that's sent to me in one way or another, so I hope that this is kind of a good way to do that. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about it. Everyone's contact information that they wanted me to showcase for their credit will be in the description, and everyone's names will be on the screen as their story plays. I hope you all enjoy. My friend. Rusted nails crucify me to the ocean floor, as if I am upside down. A blinding blackness of the abyss. A welcoming void that accepted me in open arms, suffocated under the pressure, gently choked on its icy grip, depressed somewhere between a place with no beginning or end, a vastness that stretches beyond hope, the sempiternal chill no warmth can subside, my frostbitten senses numb to question my existence, the darkness I too become, stranded in the unknown. No one is looking for me, for something they cannot see, a shadow always at my back, mimicking every move I make, my twin, my friend, who I ignore in the sunlight. But I know he is there, knowing that I always will care. Behind me he stands, with my heart clenched in his bony hands, and in the night he is all I see, everywhere all around me. He is the worry, the irrational, the illusionary, and the real. But with me, he stood behind still and thick and thin. And through it all, somewhere along the way, the rest of you fall. I am not alone with his empty embrace, the shadow with no face, who guides me hand to hand, a demon cursed within, the possession that can't be exorcised. Where my vessel is his home and I its prisoner, an enigma in every cognitive way, whispering in forbidden languages, caressing my skeletal frame and savoring sweet demise. He contours along my body, crushing what little strength remains, peering into my soul with sinister eyes, smiling inhumanly wide. His whispers echo like a reverberating doubt, and fear is all I hear. He hooks his fleshy fingers in my lips, forcing fake expressions you believe, stretching my eyelids apart all the night, and fatigue eats away at my might, overwhelming my will to control my life, playing my lifeless strings like a dusty puppet. The same show, another day, but in the stage light only am I seen. He haunts from behind the scenes, paralyzed while everything speeds by. I am left behind, a mere distant memory, where my cries echo across time to slowly be heard as silence, a fading ghost in the darkness, stalking the abandoned halls, hung with unfulfilled dreams and half-finished paintings, till I am but a motionless husk, a cocoon of rage and sorrow, and a phantom of the stranger who once lived blossoms, sleeping somewhere across oblivion, enveloped in his essence, his accursed friendship, his cold comfort, and his hope to love what he destroys, my only friend. Crunched up paper house. My friend and I used to walk through a wonderful, spacious park when we were younger. It was full of tall trees, and it was very nicely maintained. In this large park, there was an abandoned mansion. I can't really say how long it had been there, but on that day, the front door of the mansion was wide open. The two of us decided to check out what was inside the place. As we inched through the door, the very first thing we noticed was that the mansion's floor was littered with crumpled up pieces of paper. We looked at each other and observed that there was no furniture, nothing except for those wrinkled balls of paper. The mansion had 6 rooms on its main floor, and every room we entered bore more and more scrunched up pieces of paper. We decided to open up one of the paper balls to see what was inside. Our curiosity got the better of us. I picked up a single wrinkled piece, and as my friend picked up another, I unfolded my paper, smoothing out its bends and dents. At that moment, it was almost as if a piece of a rainbow emerged before our eyes, and I was suddenly standing next to a large window in one of the upstairs rooms of the house. I was looking outside into the large park. When I looked down at the piece of paper I held, it read, "Look outside the large window that oversees the park in the upstairs parlor." I dropped the piece of paper and it fluttered gracefully to the ground. Meanwhile, I stared at my open hands in a bout of horror. Dazed and utterly perplexed, I found my way downstairs and met up with my friend. He was in the kitchen, sitting at a round table that hadn't been there before. Where did that come from? I wondered. My friend stared at his opened paper and reread the words several times before he looked at me and turned the page my way. It said, "Go to the kitchen and sit at the round table." We stared at each other for a few moments, vaguely afraid, but then we began to chuckle. Within seconds, we were laughing our heads off, marveling at our newfound game. We could hardly believe what had happened, but being as young as we were, the mystery was endlessly exciting. We decided again to open another scrunched up piece of paper. As we opened up the crumpled papers on the floor, we experienced the same sudden flash of rainbow colors, but this time I ended up lying down in the field behind the mansion. When I peered onto the paper in my right hand, it read, "Lie down in the field behind the mansion." I giggled uncontrollably. After a few minutes of running around the house, I found my friend collecting multiple balls of paper in his arms, eager to experience more of these strange, exciting phenomena. We both got the gist of what was happening at this point. We had no idea as to how it was possible, but we decided to have more fun with it. The supernatural always had a way of captivating our hearts. After a few more run-throughs with these strange mini-teleportation devices, I began to feel apprehensive. I wondered if, at one point, I would be placed somewhere I didn't want to be, or I'd be made to do something I didn't enjoy. We continued through, minute after minute. We unfolded many papers and traveled through bedrooms, closets, trees. But then after having been on the roof of the mansion, I stood before my friend, dead on the living room floor. I didn't scream. I couldn't. "Murder him," I read on my crumpled page as I felt a surge of vomit and bile rising into my throat. Nothing came out, but the sickness in my throat spread to my stomach, my head, and my heart. I didn't know what to do. At this point, I began to scream and shout, praying to God for this to be a nightmare. I wanted it to go away. I wanted to rewind our day and be outside again, together, walking underneath the trees. All I could do was hide his body in a cupboard. I willed myself to be calm, and I hesitantly unfolded another paper in the hopes that the problem would correct itself. Once again, I saw the colors of the rainbow, and I found myself standing behind a tree several meters away from the house. I could clearly see the front door. Within a few instants, I saw both myself and my friend walk through that door. I began to wonder if I had died or if I was having an out-of-body experience. I looked at the sheet in my hand, and the only words scrawled upon it were, "Time will repeat itself, and a paradox will take place, and it will be allowed." That gave me an idea. In my pocket remained the paper that made me kill my friend. Without looking at it, I crumpled it back up. Quietly, I followed my other self, who had separated from my friend as he explored the rooms of the house. As I crept behind him, he turned around very suddenly. Before he could utter a syllable, I forced the paper in front of my eyes, and in a flash of rainbow colors, I was able to kill my other self. The laws of time allowed me to take my other dead self's place in this world, and also because of the fact that it was allowed to happen, as it was written on the second piece of paper that I had on me, which reversed time. It must have control over time and paradoxes, which made me now the new alive and present of my other dead self. I hid my limp, bleeding other dead self in a cupboard in the upstairs bathroom to rot. To my great relief, I heard my friend call my name from downstairs. My friend who managed to stay alive and well. My best friend. When I went downstairs, he greeted me excitingly, smiling childishly, and being blissfully unaware of the situation. I pretended that nothing had happened. In a heartbeat, I told him that the house creeped me out, and that it would be much better if we left. After that day, we never went near the mansion again. I don't know if anyone saw or heard about anything that happened between us, but I recently heard from another friend that the house had been demolished. And I can tell you with great certainty that while this news is a relief, I dreaded the probable prospect that my corpse was uncovered in the bathroom cabinet. My husband put it in crazy. I met Brandon a little over 2 years ago. We met at a friend's party and I was quite taken with him, almost immediately. His chin and cheekbones looked like they had been carved by a gifted sculptor who felt like showing off. And the fact that he was a good conversationalist, effortlessly charming, and had an arrogant glint in his eyes certainly didn't help matters. I fell hard. He told me he was crazy about me too, and less than a year later, we were married. Yes, I know what you're thinking. That it was too early, far too early. And you're right, except I didn't realize it at the time. Being lost in the funhouse of the so-called romantic stage made me brush aside my friend's advice when they told me I was rushing into this. I was happy and in love. What did my friends and family know? However, about a year into our marital bliss, I began to notice things. Brandon suddenly got into the habit of dropping by at the gym for a quick workout just before coming home from work. We used to always shower together when he got home, but now, on most days of the week, he had already showered at the gym. He said it was because he was sweaty from the aforementioned workout. He also began taking business trips much more frequently. He was on the phone a lot, almost always in his study, and would jump if I ever walked in on those rare occasions when the door wasn't locked. I came to the same conclusion that you just did, and decided to hire a private detective. Brandon exceeded my expectations. He was sleeping with not one, not two, but 6 different women. I saved the picture the detective sent me. That night when my husband came home, much later than usual after saying something about his boss being a jackass, he fell asleep next to me. I didn't confront him. I decided to let this go on for a while, because just underneath the anger, I felt genuine and morbid curiosity. I wanted to know just how far he would take this facade. In the weeks that followed, Brandon's lies became more and more creative. He had scratch marks on his shoulder because he slipped and fell at work just as his coworker was opening a drawer, and the edges of the drawer scratched his skin. He reeked of women's perfume because Laura from marketing does not understand the meaning of the word moderation, and she was a hugger. All of these cock and bull stories were told with a perfectly calm demeanor and while looking me straight in the eye. His knack for mendacity was admirable. We did keep having sex. A cheating whore he was, but he did have a great body and phenomenal love-making skills. And I have needs, so why the hell not? I had the private detective film his interaction with his lady friends. The ones that took place in public, of course. All 6 of these women seemed quite charmed with him, just as I had been. But one of them, a young girl, probably in her early to mid-20s, looked downright obsessed with him. The way she smiled at him, fawned over him, pulled her chair closer to him and kissed him even in the crowded restaurant. The way she just didn't want to let go of him when he was dropping her off at her place. Her feelings were certainly a lot more intense than those of the others. I'm willing to bet those scratch marks had come from her. Her name was Svetlana. Soon after, Brandon's devil-may-care demeanor began giving way to irritation and anxiety. He often sounded angry when talking on the phone. The person on the other end seemed to be really getting on his nerves. At times, his phone would ring non-stop. We'd be at the dinner table and it would ring. He'd answer, tell the person that they'd talk later, and it would ring immediately after he'd hung up. This would go on till he had turned it off. My suspicions about who it could be were confirmed when one evening I heard him say in an angry whisper, "It's over, Lana." The poor thing. But I couldn't totally blame Brandon for wanting to get away from her. She did seem like the obsessive kind. I couldn't help but wonder. A few days later, I decided to run into Svetlana at the mall. By now, the detective had been told that his services were no longer required, but not before I had learned the details of Svetlana's schedule. The poor girl deserved to know the truth about the man she clearly loved. I introduced myself as Brandon's wife. 2 harmless little words that, when you put together, make her look like a bomb had gone off inside her head. I told her I felt for her, that neither her nor I deserved to be lied to this way, that I would have been jealous of her had she been the only other woman, but how could I be jealous of so many women? That last thing I said made her eyes go even wider and got a "What?" out of her. I proceeded to tell her all about Brandon's other affairs. I showed her pictures, gave her names, and told her she deserves better than this, that she should move on. Then I walked away. All I had to do now was wait. The phone call came on a Friday afternoon. You see, Brandon hadn't come home the night before, and being the concerned wife that I was, I called his friends, his office, his parents, his gym, everyone. As it turns out, his secretary also didn't show up to work that day. The police officer told me to come down to the station immediately. When I got there, I learned that my husband and his secretary had been found dead in the secretary's apartment, their skulls brutally crushed. I broke down. I allowed the anger over Brandon's betrayal to finally surface, and my screams and tears made the cops think I was grief-stricken. No acting was needed. As the investigation progressed, Brandon's indiscretions became known. The cops asked if I knew about them, and I confessed that I did, but that my Brandon was just a sex addict. He told me so. He loved me, and the other women were just objects to him. We were going to seek counseling. Interestingly, one Svetlana Lebedev, one of the women Brandon had been having affairs with, had suddenly gone missing. She'd quit her job and vacated her apartment the day before Brandon was killed. Now I'm wondering if I should leave town, if Svetlana would come after me next just for daring to be married to Brandon. Although, I don't think I have much to worry about, because as crazy as she is, I think I might be crazier. Highway to Hell. So, there we were, playing Highway to Hell for what seemed to be the 10,000th time. The song was playing on repeat, with the occasional Hell's Bells and Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, all performed by AC/DC, my favorite band. This playlist was on for a special occasion, though, for we were literally going to hell. Hell is a small town in the Great Lakes state of Michigan. My brother, Wesley, and I were on our way to hell, so we could say we've been to hell and back. We were also heading over there to get a t-shirt for Wesley, which was a major reason why we were making this trip in the first place. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sydney, and I had just gotten off my last year of high school, and I was working at a local pizzeria for extra money. That was all displayed by my shirt that read, in bold, "Give me a pizza, that pie," with the name Joe's Pizza arching over the saying. I didn't like my job, but I figured nobody does, and muscled through my days of rolling dough and baking pizzas. Besides, it was better than being at home, I figured. I became sick of pizza. Just the smell of it made me ill. But occasionally, I would bake myself a free pizza, which Joe allowed, and take it home for my family to eat. My family wasn't great on money at the moment, so anytime I could bring home free food, well, it made a great day. One Friday, while I was getting off my shift to enjoy the weekend, I fixed myself a pizza for the road. I drove home in my old silver minivan with the Joe's Pizza box sitting on the passenger seat, rock tunes booming out of the car's speakers. I finally pulled into my family's driveway, slammed the car door behind me, and approached the house door with slight unease. I could hear my parents arguing inside. It was never fun to be stuck in the middle of my parents' fights. I felt like a referee in a cage match at times, sometimes being a part of the fights when my parents would look to me for confirmation to their argument like I would agree with them. Their fights were always petty, too. You were supposed to take out the trash, she'd say. It was your turn to pick Wesley up from school, he'd say. They'd argue, throwing insults at each other. Then Mom would slam the door to what was supposed to be their bedroom, while Dad would head for the old, familiar confines of the couch. Who knew why they were fighting this time? I intended to race past the mess and go to my brother's room, who was probably looking forward to my return. I opened the door and ran up the stairs, slipping past the argument ensuing in the kitchen. Walking past my bedroom, I was now facing my brother's door, which was covered in horror movie monster stickers. I knocked at the door gently and slowly opened the door, emerging into Wesley's bedroom. Wesley was my small, chubby brother, who at the moment was playing video games, but I could see he wasn't fully into the game. "Hey buddy, how's it going?" I said with a caring face. Our parents could still be heard yelling at one another downstairs. He paused his video game and turned to me, but just looked down to the ground. I shut the door behind me, muffling our parents' fight downstairs with the shutting door. I started this one," Wesley said, referring to the fight happening downstairs. "No, you didn't, buddy. Mom and Dad are just going through some things. It'll get better." No, I started it this time." "Why do you think that?" "Because I asked Dad if he'd take me somewhere, and he said no, which got Mom yelling at him, and he started yelling back, and... He trailed off, wiping his eyes with his sleeve to clear them from the tears falling down his cheeks. "Where'd you want to go?" He sniffed a few times, then began to talk. "Well, you know the small town called Hell? I thought it would be cool if we all went to Hell, like that one time we did when we were younger." He was remembering a happier time. A time where we took a family trip to Hell, Michigan, to say our family could survive a trip to Hell and back. But it didn't go well. Wesley begged Mom for a shirt, and she said no. Ever since then, he's been wanting to go back and get a shirt, specifically the one that says, "See you in Hell," in bold, with Michigan in small text just under the word Hell. I frowned. I understood where my younger brother was coming from. "You know what? We'll go to Hell, just you and me. It'll be fun, and we'll get you that shirt you've always wanted." He got his chubby body off the ground and slammed into me, clasping his arms around me for an embracive bear hug. I set the pizza box on the bed and held him tightly. "Thank you, Sydney," he said, his voice muffled by my shirt, which was covered in flour. So we packed our things up, got in the car, and hit the road. We drove for quite a while. Eventually, we turned onto M53 while jamming out to Hell's Bells. It was known to be the highway to Hell, for it was the last road you hop onto until you reach Hell, Michigan. I was banging my curly fro side to side, while my little brother head-banged off-beat in the passenger seat. He wasn't much of a rocker like me, but my music was perfect for this occasion. I was paying little attention to the road in front of me, but then something caught my eye. I was seeing something weird up ahead. "What is that?" I said, staring at what seemed to be a red fog off in the distance. I don't know. Maybe it's a flare," my little brother said, while paying no mind to what I was seeing, switching the song over to Highway to Hell. "It could be a flare, but what if it's a fire?" I kept driving, and when we got closer, it wasn't any easier to figure out where the fog was coming from. "I don't know about this. Maybe we should turn around." "No, we're almost there, Sydney. Just drive through it," Wesley said, looking up at me with a face you just couldn't say no to. "Okay, but if I sense any danger, I'm turning this car around." He nodded, and we pursued towards the fog. When we reached the red fog, it was so dense it was hard to see through, but I could just make out the road in front of us. My biggest fear at the moment was that I was driving on the wrong side of the road, and that an oncoming car might hit me if I was not careful. I started to drive under the original speed limit, going about 10 miles an hour, just to make sure I didn't get hit by any cars that could possibly be coming from up ahead that can't see us. I also turned on my fog lights since visibility was low, but it didn't seem to make much of a difference. Then something changed. I didn't notice it at first, but it became noticeable the deeper we went into the fog. The road was unusually bumpy, like we were driving on a brick road or something. As I squinted to the little bit of road I could see in front of me, I realized that the road did indeed change. We were driving on a path that was cracked a bit, with a bright red light piercing through the ground. "I really don't like this," I said nervously. Then, as Wesley was turning the volume up, the music suddenly stopped in the middle of the song, looping the word hell repeatedly, like a broken record. Wesley struggled to turn off the radio as it pierced our ears. I winced at the increased volume and yelled for him to turn it off. He hit random buttons and twisted dials till it finally stopped as he switched it off from Bluetooth to FM radio. Relief hit us both as the volume ceased. I looked over at the station playing now. 66.6 FM was the station it ended up landing on. Weird, I thought. Didn't know such a station existed. A slight shiver went down my back at the thought of the sign of the devil. 3 6s. Even though I wasn't a firm believer in the afterlife, it still made me a little uncomfortable to be on this situation. "Hey, is there any other stations other than this one?" I asked. He hit the seek arrow and it flipped through a bunch of numbers until it landed back on the same station. "Nope," Wesley said nervously, looking over at me with a concerned look. "Is the volume down?" I asked, wondering if the station was naturally silent or if the volume was just low. "I tried turning the volume down before," he said, testing the dial to see if it was turned all the way down, "and it looks like it's on mute." "Turn it up." He slowly turned up the volume, and I instantly regretted asking him to do so. Screams screeched through the car's speakers and nearly deafened my brother and me. I almost let go of the wheel to shield my ears from the violence being put upon them. "Turn it off, Wes!" I yelled. Wesley reached for the dial and spun it in the direction to mute the screams, but to no avail. The screams sounded horrific and blood-curdling. "I can't turn it off!" Wesley yelled. As he stopped attempting to silence the screams and instead covered his ears, the only defense he had against the banshee noise. Then the red fog lifted, and what we saw was, well, hellish. The sky was dark red. Before, it was a little gloomy outside, but you could just make out the sun in the sky up above. Now there was no sun in sight, just all red sky with a few black clouds. The road up ahead turned into a red bricked path. The car bobbled up and down as it lumbered across the cracked road. But that was only the tip of the iceberg in changes we perceived as we continued to look around. Large spikes seared into the red sky, and as my eyes followed the spike to its peak, I noticed something was on the tip. I squinted, then made out what it was. It was a naked man that was impaled on that giant spike. And it wasn't just one man, there were people impaled on spikes as far as the eye can see. Wesley whimpered in the passenger seat. "I don't like this, Sydney," Wesley said, sinking into his seat. "Close your eyes, Wesley," I demanded, and he quickly followed the command, covering his eyes with his palms. I checked the rearview mirror, but all I saw was the red-bricked road. No red fog that we drove through before. I looked forward, making sure I wasn't going to hit anything, then peered back into the rearview mirror. That's when I noticed something was starting to emerge a good distance behind us. It peeked over the horizon. Whatever it was getting closer, and fast. I kept my eyes on the road, but constantly was looking out the rearview mirror, trying to ignore the scenery around me. My ears adjusted to the screams through the radio. It was just background noise. As we kept driving forward, hoping to reach our destination, if that was even feasible at this point, the thing behind us came into view. "What is that?" The thing behind us appeared to be a skeleton with black wings. In its hands was a scythe. Its wings flapped vigorously as it approached closer and closer. Wesley was now turned around in his seat, peering out the back of the van to see what I was petrifyingly captivated by. Fuck speed limits, I thought. At this point, I knew it was time to floor it. I slammed my foot to the pedal and the car shook as it switched gears. The van wasn't used to going over 70 miles per hour. "Hurry, Sydney! It's gaining on us!" Wesley yelled, aware of the danger I sensed as well. I'm trying! The thing was just behind us now, no more than 20 feet away. Fuck! I finally said, releasing the panic I was holding within. The thing was now 15 feet away, 10 feet away, 5 feet away. The car began to halt. I turned to the rearview mirror and looked as the skeleton was holding its ground behind us, its scythe piercing the top of the trunk. Getting stuck there. I'd have to find a way to explain that to Mom if we made it out of here alive. If this thing didn't kill us, she would. Sparks flew up from the back of the car as the bumper made contact with the brick road. Our speed was dropping quickly. I had to think fast or we were doomed. That's when I hit the brakes, causing the van to lurch forward before I threw it into reverse. I contorted my body so I could properly see out the back window and slammed on the gas. The skeleton behind us got into a pushing motion. We were in a tug of war. We were going in reverse, and he was pushing us forward. The car's tires released smoke as its wheels turned in place, but we were slowly backing up. The skeleton switched positions, shouldering the weight of the van. Then he collapsed underneath the vehicle, and the van overcame the skeleton's strength and reversed 2 tons of minivan on top of him. I hit the brakes. Wesley and I were breathing heavily as the lights of the minivan shone onto the skeleton. "Is he dead?" Wesley asked. The skeleton twitched a bit, and then it began to prop itself back up. "Run him over! Run him over!" Wesley yelled. I hesitated at first, then threw the van into drive and slammed on the gas again. The skeleton pushed against the hood of the car, pushing us backwards a bit. I could tell it was using all of its strength to stop us from moving forward. "Run him over!" Wesley yelled again. "I'm trying!" I yelled back. Smoke appeared from the van's tires once again as the skeleton pushed against it. This time, the skeleton was winning. I cursed and began to think on my toes. I drew the car into reverse. The skeleton fell forward onto its knees, then stood up, preparing for the next move I had planned on doing. It probably thought I was going to ram him again. Fuck that, I thought. I slammed on the gas, making my way towards the skeleton. Then, right before making contact with it, I veered. I veered like I would for a deer. I floored it, and we made it past the skeleton. Or at least, I thought we did. I took in a deep breath as we drove forward onto the brick path. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. That's how much adrenaline was flowing through me at that moment. Then I heard footsteps coming from the roof. It was on top of the van. The skeleton was on top of the van. I hesitated again as my brain lagged in a dire situation. Then I whipped the wheel back and forth, hoping to get the thing to tumble off the side of the van. It was fruitless. I then heard the scythe being expunged out the top of the trunk. Shit, I thought. I looked over at Wesley, who was in tears at this point. "It's going to be all right, Wes. We got this." I gave him an unconvincing smile as thuds on the roof could be heard, until the thud stopped just above me. I veered the car again and again, but it remained on top of the car. There was only one thing left to try. Suddenly, the windshield was impaled by the scythe, which missed my face by mere centimeters. The scythe retracted, and I could feel another swing coming soon. That's when I had to make my move. I slammed on the brakes, causing the car to skid and rumble to a halt. The skeleton went flying forward and tumbled to the ground. I hit the gas and ran it over. This time, I looked into the rearview mirror to make sure he was left in the dust. The skeleton stood up and stared at us, wings starting to flutter. The car started to sputter, then it stopped. "No, no!" I yelled. "What's happening? Why aren't we going? I can't believe it right now. We're out of freaking gas!" That's when a loud thud landed on top of the roof. The skeleton was back. He walked onto the hood of the van, turned, and knelt down, peering into the van's windshield. He looked at both of us, then a deep, disembodied voice burst through the car's speakers.
"You don't belong here,"
the voice said, as the skeleton pointed a bony finger at me. "No, we don't!" I screamed. The skeleton looked back and forth at us. Then it turned and hopped off the hood. It walked a couple of steps forward, then lifted a hand in the air. A red fog began to appear, covering the area around it with its eeriness.
"Go,"
the disembodied voice said. We sat silently, not knowing to trust the skeleton or not. We really couldn't move anyway since the car had no gas left in it.
"Leave!"
it yelled, and I quickly hit the gas pedal, which moved the van forward into the fog. I looked over at the gas gauge, which still read empty. We journeyed into the fog for a few minutes. The fog turned into a pinkish color, then turned white, until it finally lifted, and a normal paved road came into view. Just ahead of us was a sign that read, "Welcome to Hell." Our van sputtered, then came to another halt as smoke began to emerge from the hood. "What the hell was that?" Wesley said, breaking the silence between us. "I think hell is precisely what it was. We let out a nervous laugh, hopped out of the car, grabbed a gas can from the trunk, and walked into hell, where a restaurant and souvenir shop was calling our names. I adopted the most precious little kitty cat. I adopted my cat, Moxie, about a week ago. She's so adorable. I love seeing her play with the little toys, a ball of yarn, or tear the guts out of a mouse. Yes, she's cute even when she kills. What I find a bit weird is that she looks me straight in the eyes as she rips the mouse to shreds. Does she want me to join in? Kitty cats are so silly. Moxie had a pretty traumatic past. Before she was at the shelter, she lived with a family of 5. Mom, Dad, 2 toddlers, and a baby. They all died on the same day. Mom, Dad, and the toddlers were found in their beds with their throats slit open. Cops couldn't even determine what kind of weapon was used. As for the baby, he was never found. They just found some of his tiny little fingers in Moxie's litter box. Poor Moxie. I can't imagine how sad she must have been, losing her entire family and then just waiting around in a shelter for some kind soul to come along and take her home. Fortunately, that kind soul was me. I wanted her the second I laid eyes on her. I'm pretty sure she wanted me too. Of course she did. Why else would her eyes emit a glow whenever I came closer to her cage? I wonder if the glow in the eyes thing is a breed-specific trait. I'm going to have to Google that shit later. For all her cuteness, Moxie has habits that are a bit weird. For example, the other night I woke up to a strangling sensation. Moxie had somehow wrapped her yarn around my throat and was pulling on it with all her strength. And her strength is actually pretty impressive for a kitty cat. I somehow disentangled the yarn from my throat, and after coughing for a few seconds, I told Moxie that this was no time to play. She let out a disappointed sounding meow and left the room, taking her yarn with her. Maybe I need to spend more time with Moxie. What am I saying? Of course she needs more attention. She's probably still sad about losing her family. From now on, I'm going to make more time for my little fur baby. This morning, as I ate my milk and cereal, Moxie sat right there on the breakfast table watching me eat. She was so cute. Her eyes would follow the motion of the spoon carrying the milk and cereal into my mouth and then going back to the bowl. I was just enjoying my breakfast and admiring Moxie's cuteness when my phone rang. I was so startled that I dropped my spoon, along with the milk and cereal spilt onto the table, was a small piece of glass. How could that get in there? After finishing my phone conversation, I looked into my cereal bowl. There were several pieces of glass in there. They were all tiny. I probably wouldn't have been able to see them had I not dropped my spoon and spilt the milk and cereal along with that one piece of glass. How very irresponsible of the cereal company. I should sue them. Even Moxie seemed to agree with me as she let out a little meow, just like she had done the previous night. Such a smart kitty. I just got home a short while ago. I bought a whole bunch of toys and interactive games for Moxie. I'm going to be a better pet owner and will spend an hour every day playing with my kitty. But first, I need a bath. I'm soaking myself in the tub. The warm water feels so relaxing, and Moxie is such a smart kitty. She just walked in, picking up my hairdryer in her mouth that's plugged in. This is amazing, and how very considerate of her. She doesn't want me to have wet hair and catch a cold, so she just came and sat at the edge of the tub, holding the plugged-in dryer in her mouth.